Welcome back, everyone. Working on these liner locks. In the last video, I left off with this one right here. And I'm just getting it set up, getting it fit up, and to go the next step, which is to work on handles, bolsters for these. Then I'll grind the blades. I've still got to do some final tuning to get it up where it needs to be, and the stop point, final stop point. I've got 5 of them here. 2 of them are snake mosaics, but I thought I'd go over a couple things I've been getting questions about and slow this down a little bit, even slower than it already is. So if you're still here, I will cover some of those questions for you because I'm not getting any questions about anything else, and these are not blockbuster videos for people. So I've got the 2 mosaic knives, and one of them will be a frame lock. There will also be a frame lock out of one of these other blades. One of my patrons asked the questions, what's the difference between a frame lock and a liner lock? And I thought I'd go ahead and show it here. So this is a liner lock, and it will have scales and bolsters. And this is a frame lock. So the scales is the frame, and that is the handle. So this is a completed knife, a knife that I carry, and the same design as this knife. So that's the only difference. Frame lock, liner lock. They use the same lockup, everything else. Now, some other things I'm going to cover here and show you what you can do options-wise, because I'm getting other questions about bearing pockets and stuff like that. One of those questions is, why didn't I cut bearing pockets on the blades here, or in the blades? Well, for frame locks, I'd never do that. I cut them right into the frames because I've got plenty of meat there to cut into. Liner locks, I use a 65 thousandths liner, and depending on the thickness of the bearings, I will cut the bearings into the liners. For example, this is a 45 thousandths bearing, 45 thousandths thick. It's hard to see it there, right there. And these are 60 thousandths thick, quite a bit of difference. So I'm going to be using some 45 thousandths bearings in one of these liners, and I will come in here and cut about 27 thousandths out of the liners, out of 65 thousandths. So I'll cut 27, that'll leave me about 20 thousandths on each side of the blade. And that's how I approach that. Now, I have cut bearing pockets in these for 60 thousandths, but you have to be very careful. I like to leave 20 or less on the side, each side of the blade for my gap. I use 15 a lot, but 20 is the max I'll go. These are 20 thousandths. That's the gap in there. Or you don't have to use bearings. Don't cut bearing pockets anywhere. Use silicon bronze washers. These washers are 20 thousandths thick, silicon bronze. Now, they won't be as smooth as bearings, but they'll work just fine. And that's what I have in this one right now. It's just mocked up, but that's what's going to be in here. It doesn't have any detent in it, so it's not going to be snappy, but that's what's going to be in here. And I thought I would do that to show you, give you some options that you don't have to cut bearing pockets. Most liner locks up until just a few years ago were all done with washers, and many still do to this day. I do it all the time. You don't have to use bearings, silicon bronze. You just make sure your backspacer matches, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So you take the thickness of your finished blade, your flats are finished, and you take your 2 washers, and you're going to add your 2 washers, and I'm doing it like this just to show you. You take your 2 washers and add them up. In this case, I'm 162 thousandths. Okay, blade plus the 2 washers. There'll be a washer on each side. So that means that my backspacer needs to be 162 thousandths. And you'll have a good, tight, smooth blade. So you need to make sure that you get that right, because if you're off, you know, it's going to be pinching and binding, which really, you know, is going to make it not so smooth. So right now, that's what I have here. I have a backspacer that's 162 thousandths, and that's the distance I have covered in between the two liners. I've got this pivot pin locked down very tight, and you can see it opens and closes just fine, and that's what you want, good smooth operation. So as I build these out, I'm gonna have a frame lock with bearings, a liner lock with bearings, and the others with these bronze washers. And you'll see the difference, and we can compare and that sort of thing. So you're gonna have to follow along, watch this series. Nobody else is. All right, let's get to it. We got to get these blades normalized and heat treated so I can start working on everything else. All right, so I'm gonna get this blade in here and get it normalized and do a little grain refining. I'm gonna go to 1575 and pull it out, let it cool to black, then 1450, put it back in and heat at 1450, pull it out, let it cool to black again, and we'll be ready to harden this blade. Actually harden two blades. I got them in fall for this step, so I don't want them to scale up. You could put some kind of anti-scale or whatever. I'll probably use some actually when I go to harden them. So while I'm waiting on the blades to normalize and grain refine, I've got some titanium here. I'm going to start cutting out some parts. Some for the frame lock, some for the liner locks. I'm going to be making bolsters as well out of this thick titanium. This is 165 thousandths. Now when you're cutting titanium, you want to use a bimetal blade and you want to run slow, because if you run fast, like when you're cutting steel, it's going to heat up, it's going to work harden, and it'll gum up your blade. You'll just have a mess. Some people run these blades very fast, basically burn through it. But I just run it slow. I've got a variable speed bandsaw. It's old but capable. And I turn it down and cut them out. All right, so got that backspace material forged out. Now I'm just letting it anneal somewhat. It won't be a full anneal because it's not proper. It's enough that I can drill it and work it, and then I'll heat treat it before I etch it. But I did a little normalization cycle there to help get all the grain structure in the right place. But while that's all going on, blades are still tempering. I'm going to go ahead and start working on bolsters. These are titanium, are going to be titanium bolsters, half mooned here. And I do this a couple ways, and I've said that before. I do things different depending on how I feel at the moment. Right now, I don't feel like super gluing and having to deal with the super glue. So I clamp it. So whatever I do, I try to do it right and everything clean. The great thing is that with bolsters, you just have to line up one side. In other words, unlike a backspacer where you have to line up liner through the backspacer and out the other liner, you don't have to be that deadly accurate with this, but it's going to be pretty close when I'm done. Because I drill these liners at the same time. And right now I just got this one clamped on. I'm going to drill the 2 holes that'll hold it on to the liner. And I will use the same size bit, which is the tap size drill, to keep alignment after I drill the first hole and keep everything straight, centered. Then I'll scribe them out and line them up, and we'll start shaping them. So we'll get over to the drill press, get this one started. One of the reasons why you might want to glue them up together before you drill them is so when you're shaping them, you can line up everything a lot easier. It's easier to shape them together, which I'm going to be doing. That's what the plan is. So hopefully we'll have them lined up here. I've got both of the liners together on top of that bolster. Same, put a pin in here, and hopefully this bolster will line up with that one. So what this will do is I can take them off of here now real quickly. Put them back together. Now, if they were glued together, they'd still be stuck. You wouldn't take them apart just yet. But I didn't feel like dealing with glue. So because they're lined up perfectly, I can shape them together. I can cut my half moon in here and profile them out roughly and fit them on there. But gluing them up is the best way to do it to prevent getting any misalignment. You know, it won't matter in the end result, but it'll help you shape these things. And that's what's important. You get perfect matches. When you're looking down at the knife, the bolsters are even across here. They're not cocked or canted. You know what I'm saying. Everything's square, 90 degrees to each other. Looks good. Another little tip that I failed to mention, when I'm doing multiple knives here and multiple parts, everything gets marked. I've got the outsides of this one liner marked with the number and if it's in or out. Just the same with all the liners and the bolsters. I know this is the inside. That way the holes will match up. If you move them around, it may not match up. So everything is, and I just took a hand graver and just grave it on there. It'll be there forever underneath there, but that's not seen. Just another tip. And did I mention it was like 98 in here? All right, got the blades out of temper. Now I'm gonna go ahead and ream them. If you remember, I drilled them undersize a couple thousand so I can come back and ream them after all the heat treating, clean that hole up real nice and slick. It'll be nice and shiny and we'll be good to go. I don't like to leave scale in there. And if you ream the size before you heat treat, then you're not gonna clean that scale up unless you go oversize, and that's not good. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these reamed. I still gotta clean a little bit of scale off of these from the heat treating, but they're in pretty good shape right now. Real nice and clean in there. And now it's reamed to size. All right, I got the backspacer material out of the oven where I just put it in there after I forged it, cleaned it up a little bit, and I will be able to get 2 backspacers out of it if I'm careful, which will be nice. And what you'll have is some lines running across here from those crushed W's, those twisted W's. It'll look kind of cool. They'll be a little spacey, but they'll look nice. So next thing I want to do on the mosaic blade Linerlock is I have to cut the pockets in for the bearings that I'm using. Those are 47 thousandths, which I got to go in 27 on these liners. And I wanted to talk about a couple other things that I've got questions about, and that being, do I use washers, thrust washers behind the bearings? And I do, and I've kind of gotten away from it though. What I do is I put my bearings in there. Okay, I'll go ahead and cut the pockets. I'll put a pivot through there, and you don't have to worry about assembling it all together. You can, but I put the blade in there with it, and I work that blade back and forth. I tighten that pivot tight, and work it back and forth till I work grooves into the titanium where that pocket is. It'll be a couple thousandths, and once you do that, it work hardens, and you're not going to wear it down. It's tough. Once you get it to that point, that's it. And that's where I leave it. It's smooth, don't have to worry about it, and you don't have to put a 10 or 20 thousandths washer in there that takes up more space. And that's a little trick that I do to prevent from doing that. So that should answer that question. So I'm gonna get the backspacer cut and start working on these bolsters, since I've got those tapped and ready to go for the other blades. And I've got the Damascus bolsters for the one Linerlock, Damascus Linerlock. And I'm going to work on the frame locks later. I'll do these 3 Linerlocks and pick those up. But I think that's all I got for now. We'll pick back up right here on the next video. I want to thank you for watching. We're going to see you on the next one.